how we deal with death is as important as how we deal with life. As we move into part 2 of our conversation of Wrath of Khan, we move from the fact that we all will face our Kobayashi Maru into the fact of how. How do we face it? As I mentioned in part 1, this conversation is dedicated to my friend Jeremy. Jeremy faced his own Kobayashi Maru in his battle with pancreatic cancer, that I was able to walk with him through that process. And even 6 months later, still am grieving. And I know that his wife and his daughter still grieve his loss, especially as we enter this holiday season. So I'd also ask for your support for Amanda, who continues their work with Pioneers, their missionary organization, to support other missionaries, because other missionaries out in the field especially face their own Kobayashi Marus. They face their own no-win situations. And Amanda helps them walk through it. When everything seems hopeless and lost, she points them back to hope. So the ask for this conversation is to go support Amanda Ross. Go to pioneers.org, click on the donate button, and put Amanda Ross in the comments. There's a QR code on the YouTube video. Because if we go back to that original quote, how we face death is as important as how we face life, then you almost have to ask yourself the next question of how do I live my days well? And I think by supporting someone like Amanda and Jeremy and their daughters as they go through this, as they still grieve the loss of their husband and their father, I think there's no greater honor and there's no greater sacrifice that you could provide for them.
The movies and stories we love are gateways to see ourselves and God in new ways.
Every great story borrows its power from a larger story, the story that's written on our hearts and woven into the fabric of our very being.
Hello and welcome to the Men at the Movies podcast. My name is Paul McDonald, and in a couple minutes, we will rejoin my conversation with Britt as we discussed Wrath of Khan, because we kind of got to this point, and I realized we can't really finish the episode without talking about the death of Spock. Not something I really wanted to get into, considering this was the first episode I recorded after the death of my friend Jeremy. In part 1, we sort of established the problem. We're all going to die at some point. How do we age well? And really in this scenario, we talk about how do we die well, or what does it mean to live with the time remaining to us? And as we talked about it, I felt like this was a perfect episode to dedicate to my friend Jeremy, because he faced his death well. You know, for almost 2 years, we walked through cancer treatments, fear, diagnosis, sadness, grief. And even though you'd think that 2 years of preparation would get you ready for the moment when he actually entered into the kingdom, it does not. And even 6 months later, there are moments of grief and moments where you're sitting in a hotel room exchanging pictures and crying, as I did when I was preparing episode 1. So what does it mean to face death well? What does it mean to face it with honor, with dignity, to understand that your sacrifice matters? When we first got the diagnosis, I made all these grand plans of, I'm going to go down to Florida every month, every 2 months. I want to spend as much time in the time that he had left to spend with my friend. And I realized very quickly how selfish that was. And during the last several months, it actually got really difficult for me because I didn't get to spend as much time as I would have liked with my friend. I didn't get to have those deep, meaningful conversations. I didn't get what I considered to get that final closing conversation and visit. And for somebody with my proclivity and my brokenness and my own issues, that was something that was very difficult to handle after he died, because I was like, oh, did I mess up? The bill came due, as it were. And what I've come to realize over these months of wrestling and grieving and talking with God and counselors and all this is it was very selfish of me to say, hey, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to spend as much time when there were other people who needed Jeremy more. And what could I do? What could I sacrifice? And so we had this conversation about a year ago when I got to visit him. It was the only visit that we had in that time that was just me and him. And we were going on his way to his chemo treatment. And he was talking about forks. And, we only have so many forks that we can give. People would ask him, hey, can you come do this? Or I'd love to come talk to you. Or I'd love to come see you. And he's like, yeah, that'd be great. I would love to talk to you. I would love to come spend time with you. I only have so many forks to give. I have so much time. I only have so much energy. And he's choosing to give it to Amanda and the girls and the people who are closest to him. And so as the months wound down, as we entered the new year and his time grew short, one of the ways that I showed my love to him was not to demand his time or his attention or his phone calls. It was to say, hey, buddy, whatever fork that you had that could have been mine, and as one of his close friends, should have been mine in my own broken way of thinking, I give it to you, buddy. I give it to Amanda. I give it to your daughters. I give it to the people who are there in Orlando with you. I give it to the people who are there who need it more than I do. And that was really hard. Like I said, really hard after he died. And I was like, what have I done? I've screwed up and now I'll never get that chance. But we know that in the kingdom currency, as we'll talk about, nothing's ever lost in the kingdom, because in order for there to be new life, there has to be a death. Jesus said, unless a seed goes in the ground and dies, new life will not spring forth. You will have no fruit. But one seed, think of how much one seed of wheat, how many grains that produces. One apple seed will produce a tree that produces hundreds of apples, I think. I don't know the math. I'm not a farmer. But that's what we hope for in the kingdom, that for every one seed that we plant, everything that goes in the ground and dies, that God will redeem and use and produce 30, 60, 100-fold, the supernatural growth and production and harvest. Because our job is just to plant. God's job is the rest of it, the watering, the feeding, the growing. And then the harvest time comes and we get to enjoy the fruit of his labor. So let's kick back in as we go, and we talk about the death of Spock here in part 2 of our conversation about the wrath of Khan. Spock was like a check to Kirk. He would say, because Kirk is passion, he's excitement, he's adventure. And so he needed Spock to balance that, to say, no, this isn't a wise decision. You're acting rashly, foolishly, passionately. This is the logical move. And Kirk would sink that in. He would figure out how to take that advice to listen to Kirk, he would figure out how to listen to Spock and still act in a way that's authentic to who he is.
Well, and
Khan did not have that.
Yeah, very good. Khan didn't have it. Or he actually did, but he wouldn't listen to him.
Because that would have required humility.
But see, here's so again, as a big fan of the original show and the movies and the whole thing, the question becomes, why is Spock Kirk's friend? Like, what is Kirk bringing to the table? Spock knows Kirk will end up making the right decision.
He trusts him.
You treat a half-breed like a real person with value. The Federation doesn't. My Vulcan homeworld doesn't treat me like a real person. I'm a half-breed to everybody else. They think Bones thinks I'm just an emotionless, green-blooded, pointy monster.
Damn it, Jim.
You treat me with respect and value, and I trust that you will end up making the right decision. And even if you don't, I trust that you wanted to make the right decision. Right? And Because there's a part of Kirk that's logical. He just needs the friend to call it out of him. That's what we need. We need the friends to say, this is who you are. Let me call it out of you. And bring a different perspective that calls it out of you, right? And helps you grow in that area, right? And so, but Khan is kind of like the devil character. Where do they find Khan? On
hell.
In hell. I mean, there's a hellish element to it.
It's a lifeless landscape.
Right? Okay, so here's the thing. And he's consumed, to your point, which is very good. He's consumed by, like you said, jealousy, envy. He's consumed by revenge. He's consumed by unforgiveness. And here is why God tells you to stay the heck away from unforgiveness, because it will destroy you. Mm-hmm. We think holding on to forgiveness punishes the other person. And in the end, like to your point, he does hurt Kirk. I've hurt you. I'll go on hurting you. I've done, I've done worse than kill you. I'm hurting you. Like, that's evil. That's how evil thinks.
I spit my last breath at you.
Right. But here's the thing. Again, this is one I don't remember the exact quote from biblically, but Paul's talking about unforgiveness and offense when he says, don't give the devil a foothold in your life.
Yeah.
He's talking about unforgiveness, because if you won't forgive others, now that doesn't mean you let them back into your life wholeheartedly. Right. Sometimes you got to give boundaries but if your heart has unforgiveness and offense in it, it will destroy you. And that's what we see with Khan. It not only, at first it destroys everyone around him, even the voice of reason in his life. And that's what offense will do. Offense will destroy the voice of reason in your life, because there might be people who are trying to tell you the most loving, kind, logical, reasonable thing that they can possibly tell you, and you will push them away in order to hold on to this unforgiveness. And this has happened to someone I love very recently, where they rejected some things. And I was telling somebody else, I said, my concern is not just that they believe a lie, but they're going to hold on to it and they're going to lose their soul. Yeah. They're going to lose their soul over holding on to this unforgiveness. They're going to lose their soul. That's more important to me than if I'm right or I win an argument or whatever. That's the most important thing is, man, like, this really can, and that's the escalation we see in Khan's arc. That's the tragedy element to it. And I think it is purposeful that I don't know that they give him any real Shakespearean quotes, but it's almost Shakespearean tragedy when you look at Khan. Like, as he's speaking very, Shakespeare.
Well, it's from Moby Dick.
Yeah, yeah.
Of the white whale that kills Ahab. And even when they sort of enter the living quarters at first, they see the copy of Moby Dick in there.
Right.
And this is probably going to sound, I know in this world of trauma and self-help and all this, there is a certain degree that the person you need to forgive is yourself. For years after my divorce, I would not allow myself. I never believed that I was I couldn't forgive myself for the trauma that I inflicted on my first wife and my children. And there's a sense that I have to forgive myself. I have to, maybe the better phrase is, I have to receive the forgiveness that's already been given.
Excellent.
Because every sin that I've ever, going back to Emeth, faithfulness, beginning, middle, and end, past, present, and future, Jesus died 2,000 years ago. Do I really think that when I ask for forgiveness matters when I actually was forgiven? I was forgiven 2,000 years ago. That was the sacrifice. That was the blood shed for the forgiveness of sins. Every sin in my life has already been put on the cross. Whether I did it yesterday, I do it today, or I will do it tomorrow. Already forgiven.
Right.
I just have to access it.
Right. Well, and here's how you access it. Right? Because what you're saying, yes, he died 2,000 years ago. But because he was both God and man, he also died in eternity. So the death and the blood transcends time. So if you go to him there, that's what you're saying, is that like, it's not just 2,000 years ago, it's literally an eternal reality. That forgiveness, the blood, speaks a better word, shakes the heavens and the earth. The blood of, the old covenant just shook the earth, but Jesus's blood shakes, his sacrifice shakes
all of creation,
the unseen and the seen and the unseen, shakes all of it, and calls us to something which cannot be shaken, which is the kingdom. That's all. That's Hebrews 12 or so, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But
hang on, because there's another aspect. Then this will sound heretical. You have to forgive God. I am not saying God sinned or did anything wrong. However, my wife will do something that will upset me. She will make a decision that I don't like. And I will say, you didn't do anything wrong. I still have to forgive you. Because what you did hurt my feelings. What you did, I received this way. How many people have lost a child? And I mean, and refuse to turn to God because they're like, if he did that, I don't want a God that allows children to die. C.S. Lewis turned from God because he prayed, and once he prayed, his mom was healed. That strengthened his faith. His mom got sick again. He prayed, his mother died. He's like, basically, God hurt me, and I don't want to believe in a God that would hurt me. And there is a sense of God, we have to, in our hearts, make that shift. I forgive you for, sometimes for taking my friend from me. I forgive you for this. I'm not blaming you. And it's not about right or wrong. It's not about scales. It's not about legalism. It's about, I open my heart to you, even though it hurts. I'll sing about the resurrection and death. Where is thy sting? At the same moment that I definitely feel the sting of the loss of my friend.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm saying, F you to the world, F you to the enemy. And even though it hurts, even though I'm crushed, I'm still turning and praising God, because that's the only hope I have. Right? That unshakable, that anchor to my soul is, nothing else. I know even in the dark moments, I'll still choose you because you chose me. He said, the same thing Spock said, I am and will always be your friend.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think that there's a shift that has to happen in our hearts toward God and reasoning with him. This happened. Like, we got to deal with this, and being able to be honest with God through that. And like you're saying, it's, I don't even know if there's a right way to put it. Like you're saying, it's not, I have to forgive him because he did something bad, but there definitely is a,
well, I remember, my brother, his son needed surgery. This was several years ago. And he went and he's like, you need this. It's going to make you better, all this. And he went into surgery and came out. He's like, I'm mad at you because I feel worse. I don't feel better. But he was like, the process of healing causes pain.
Right.
And in that pain, whether that's, you've got an infection. I've got to cut it out. Got to cause an incision to lance the wood. Your broken arm didn't set correctly. We've got to re-break it in order to set it correctly. In that pain, we're going to be mad at the pain giver. Even if logically we know this is for my healing. Logically, I know Romans 8:28. God, all things work for the good of those who love God. Great. Faith is holding on to that when the externals say otherwise.
Well, and just remember, God can take it when you get mad at him.
Right.
If there's anybody who can take it. Because here's the thing. It's about wrestling with him. Like Jacob did. And Jesus did in the Garden of Gethsemane. Yeah. I don't want to do this. Oh. This is going to suck.
The end of season 5 of The Chosen that shows that.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet.
It's really good, like making that real.
Yeah.
That wrestling.
And if the perfect, sinless Son of God can look at his Father and go, yeah, this is I don't want this.
Please don't make me do this.
He can handle it when I do it too.
Right.
Because at least I'm coming to him.
Yes.
And he can deal with that. But what happens is we allow our unforgiveness of God, our hurt toward God, or whatever it is, we allow the devil to lie to us and say, well, this means he doesn't love you.
Right.
This means he's not good. And so we back away and we start to believe those things. And we start to find voices in our life that'll tell us those things. And we'll latch on to that.
And we party to forget, right? Like you said.
Yeah. And so, it's this whole idea of Christianity being this, fun-loving, cruise ship experience where, you get everything you ask for and your life is good all the time. And it's like, the Bible never gives us that model.
Jesus never
gives us that model. But but to your point is what he says is it'll be worth it. You were going to go through this stuff anyway. Now you can go through this kind of stuff and it matters.
And you have hope.
You were going to go through the no-win situation anyway.
Right.
Now you can go through it in a way where you have a relationship with someone who loves you unconditionally, and it'll be worth it in the end. Yeah. If you hold on to it. And and Kirk needed to go through these things. Kirk actually had to face his friend's death, to take note, to actually listen to his friends, to say, this isn't what what most people, just look at it. So in this movie, he loses Spock. In the next movie, he loses the Enterprise. He blows up the Enterprise, right? But then at the end of the third movie, what's his punishment? Again, you said the not the third movie, but the fourth movie, The Voyage Home, where they go back and save the whales, and not about how cheesy it was, but what happens at the end of that movie, the punishment is he's bucked down to captain and he has to become a captain of a starship again. Oh no. Like that's where he was going the whole time. But he had to go through those sacrifices in order to get to be where he wanted to be where he was called to be, and and it's just, this movie is just so great because, again, they even play Amazing Grace at the end. There's some very clear Christ-like sort of symbolism that they're doing here. And I think they planned to bring Spock back. they plan to have some sort of resurrection story in the next movie. So you see little signs of that along the way too. And so, but ultimately it's just such a beautiful movie that reminds us, especially as we get older, you still have value. There's still adventure, and give your life for something that matters. So I love it.
So Britt and I just had an off-camera discussion of whether or not to go to the last two clips. And I made the executive decision to do it because to me, both of these last two clips are bookends to the clips we've seen earlier. So as we've said, so as we've been talking about doing this movie, Britt's always, whenever he would say, let's do Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, my immediate thought is Khan. About a day before I watch it, I'm like, oh, wait, this is the one where Spock dies. You know, his best friend dies in this movie. That's not going to hit home for me at all. So I was kind of cursing Britt under my breath. My wife came in like right after Spock dies and she's like, it's just a movie. It's like, it's got nothing to do with the movie. But I don't feel like we can really adequately we can't cover this movie without including the death of Spock. And the idea, as Kirk will say in his eulogy, he was the most human. And so in the context of the movie, if it's been 40 years since you've seen it, Khan sets off the Genesis seed project thing that basically acts like a bomb for hundreds of miles. And so they have to get out of the blast area. But they are on impulse power because something's wrong with the motors because they've been taking a beating. Spock decides to go into the chamber filled with radiation, fix it so that everyone else can escape. And so Bones calls Kirk. He says, hey, you need to get down here. Those calls are not pleasant. Mm-hmm. Hey, you need to get down here. Mm-hmm. And so this is what those moments are.
Ship. Out of danger?
Yes.
Don't grieve, Admiral. It is logical. The needs of the many outweigh
the needs of the few.
Or the one. I never took the Kobayashi Maru test. Until now. What do you think of my solution? Spock. And always shall be your friend. Live long and prosper.
No.
We are assembled here today to
to pay final respects to our honored dead. And yet it should be noted that in the midst of our sorrow, this death takes place in the shadow of new life, the sunrise of a new world, a world that our beloved comrade gave his life to protect and nourish. He did not feel this sacrifice a vain or empty one, and we will not debate his profound wisdom at these proceedings. Of my friend, I can only say this. Of all the souls I have encountered in my travels, his was the most human.
One of the things that I texted you was, because there's a theme of friendship in this. You shared a quote by, was it the director or somebody? Spock's going to die in this. It's really about friendship. That's really the theme. And I texted the Bible verse, greater love has no man than this, and to lay his life down for his friends. So what's the solution to the no-win situation? What's the first thing that Spock asked? Is the ship out of danger? Did it work? Did my life matter? Did my sacrifice mean something? Because we're going to die anyway. Did I make it mean something? I was all alone. I think we talked about this because didn't we do this movie, Saving Private Ryan? And I was all alone in the movie theater because no one wanted to watch grossness for 20 minutes or whatever.
The battle scene, the beach scene.
Nobody wanted to go see the movie with me. And I was not prepared for the end. When he looks at his wife and he said, "Am I a good man? Tell me I'm a good man. Tell me his sacrifice meant something." And she said, "You are." And I'm weeping in the movie theater. Because isn't that what we want? You're going to lose your life anyway. Lose it for my sake, Jesus says. Because you can lose your life for a lot of different reasons. You can lose your life being safe and secure and hiding behind rules and regulations, or you can try to save it, but you're going to lose it anyway. Or you can lose your life for my sake and keep it. And keep it. And that's what Spock does. And because he does that, because he lays his life down for his friends and shows the greatest love, he's the greatest human. That's the connection. That's being a real human. I mean that in the sacred image of God way. Right. That's what I mean. That's who humans were meant to be. People who lived, we were made in the image of God to reflect his glory upon the earth, to each other and to the earth. And that's what Spock does. Spock shows him this is what it means to face death and have meaning. And we'll get to the other clip. You've lived a different way before up till now, Kirk. It's time to live a different way. And as a Star Trek fan, I'm a little annoyed that they had Savick, the Vulcan crying at the end. I'm a little annoyed. But his sacrifice meant something. Khan's death meant nothing in the end.
That's good.
But Spock's life and death meant everything to those people that he saved. And that's the story. That's the story we want to be a part of.
Thanks for taking the point on that while I struggled to contain my emotions.
Me too.
I know, you took the hit. No greater love. And Either way, in this scenario, Spock dies. He dies with the entire ship.
Right.
If they don't get out of the blast area, Spock dies if he goes in and fixes the engine so they can escape. And that's a no-win situation. What I really, bringing up that line, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Or or the one. And I always thought, as I'm watching that it was Spock was the one. But it was Kirk.
Yes.
Because Kirk would not have allowed Spock in there because he loved his friend.
Mm-hmm.
So Kirk had to lay down his life. Because that's not what he would have chosen. He would have probably preferred to die with his friend. A friend of mine came over the night after Jeremy died. We stayed up till 2 a.m. drinking bourbon. And he said one of these things that's simultaneously really depressing and really comforting. He said, in every group of friends, one friend will not attend any funerals, I guess, except for as guest of honor. One friend will attend all the funerals. And in some ways, it's harder to be the one who attends all the funerals. Because you have to experience life in the gap, in the loss, in the absence. You're the one who experiences the sting of death. My friend, his wife and daughters are dealing with that gap. Again, this is a no-win situation because, we're all going to die. It's going to happen, but how do we live? How do we face death? How do we deal with death is as important as how we deal with life. And so Kirk has to struggle with that. And he does. As we mentioned, he had those reading glasses. One lens is now shattered. His vision through Spock is no longer directly available. He doesn't have Spock to go to say, hey, here's the situation. What's the logical conclusion? What should I do? He doesn't have his friend to go to for counsel.
Mm-hmm.
But David shows up. David, who he realizes is his son from decades earlier, that doesn't know that he's his dad. Grew up sort of hating Kirk as a space boy, planet hopper, adventure lover, swashbuckler, whatever you want to call it. But he comes in as Kirk is trying to read without the use of his glasses. And so here is that scene.
Can I talk to you for a minute?
I poured myself a drink. Would you like it?
Lieutenant Savick was right. You never have faced death.
No, not like this. I haven't faced death. I've cheated death. I tricked my way out of death and patted myself on the back for my ingenuity. I know nothing.
You knew enough to tell Savick that how he faced death is at least as important as how he faced life. words. But good words. That's where ideas begin. Maybe you should listen to them.
At one point in the movie, in Shadowlands, C.S. Lewis is dealing with grief and suffering because of his wife, who he loves. And he's been telling people about grief and suffering and God's purpose within the pain. And he's like, yeah, but it actually hurts. Like the words are true, but now I have to live the words. Like, I've been telling people this for a long time, but now I have to live it. You know, in the movie Shadowlands, he had placed himself in this bubble. And now he was outside of that bubble, and life hurts outside of the bubble. And Spock is learning the same thing. Kirk, I'm sorry. Kirk is learning the same thing. He had placed himself in this admiral bubble. But when you're dealing as the captain and you're commanding a starship, stuff happens. And now he's really having to live the truth instead of just parrot the idea of truth. And a major part of this movie, which is really important for us as middle-aged people, men, women, part of hiding, which Bones accuses him of, is not dealing with your past. So he had a past. He was, like I said, kissing all the aliens, kissing all the, the girls on the starship, he was the playboy sort of figure. But now the writers of Star Trek do something really important. They say, well, that behavior has consequences. Like, that behavior actually, like, that's a complex idea that's important. Like, he has a son that he hasn't really talked to. And he's kind of not forgotten about, but he hasn't really dealt with. But now, you didn't share it in the scene, but at the end of that scene, he embraces his son. So part of moving forward is embracing your past as you move forward, not trying to hide from your past, because Paul was forgiven for persecuting Christians, but he never forgot it. Like, if you see, read how passionate Paul is against Jewish legalism. There's a reason he's that passionate. He's like, I know more than anyone how this will kill you. Don't do this. Don't do that. Right? It's just about him. It's just about Jesus. It's just about Christ. I give it all up for him. All that sort of stuff. Like, he had the experience. And so now Kirk has the experience. He saw a young man die, right? Scotty's nephew, whatever. I mean, he sees a young man die. Now he has a son. Like, Spock died for this too, right? Am I not going to embrace this? Because Spock died for me to learn and reflect on this too, and embrace it and incorporate it in a good way, in a healthy way, in a loving way, and in a reconciling sort of way. And I think that's a really beautiful end to the story for Kirk, because that's how he has grown, and doesn't just give up because his friend is gone. That's how he remembers his friend in the right way.
Yeah, I heard, and I'm probably going to butcher the idea, but it's the idea of being sane, being emotionally healthy, is admitting the truth about the world we find ourselves. It's not diminishing. It's not downplaying. It's saying this happened, and being able to be present and deal with it, like you just said Kirk did, and being willing to embrace his son. And I just thought, out of Spock's death comes new life. Not, obviously The search for Spock, he's coming back, right? Wow, the search for Spock, and it was just a skull. That'd be really depressing.
Yeah.
But not just the life, but we talked, when I've talked with Whaler, he said this Jewish idea, like if you save a life, you've saved thousands of lives. Because every person who exists, because that person continued to exist, right? And so Spock's death brought life to people who would not have lived. It brought life to Kirk because he could embrace his son and start a new relationship. Because death isn't always death. You know, it could be a real death. Like my friend, like my grandmother, my dad's mom died when he was 38. And as a 50-year-old now, I'm like, that is young to lose your mom. There's people who are listening who lost their parents much earlier. There are people who've never known their parents. Death may be a real thing,
Right.
But it could be death of a marriage, death of a son, death of a dream, death of like something dies, right? And that's, unfortunately, that's Jesus' invitation, right? Is come and die. But it's only through death that you'll find life, that you'll become the person that you're meant to be, that you'll become the reflection of the image of God in this earth.
Here's one of the lies that Kirk believed, is that commanding a starship meant he couldn't be a father.
Right.
He believed that lie. But the death of Spock makes him look at life differently. Am I going to waste my time that I have left and not know my son? Right? You know, like there's a lot that's being communicated there. And again, I just keep going back to, I mean, you know, you can't do everything, but just living with the end in mind, realizing, man, I don't know how much time I have, but how am I giving my life for something that has meaning? And man, that's the gospel. That's the gospel. The gospel doesn't promise that everything will work out the way we want it to, but it does promise that if you'll give your life, it'll have eternal meaning, and it will lead to more life.
Because another quote, you know, we've got Khan, whose sort of story is framed by Moby Dick. You've got Kirk, whose story is framed by Tale of Two Cities. And at the end, he quotes the book, "It is a far, far better thing that I do than I have ever done. It is a far, far better rest that I go to than I have ever known." I'm not sure he quotes the second half of that line, but and it's spoken by one of the characters in the book as he's sacrificing himself for someone else. And we know that the things that we have laid down, the things we have died to, and by the way, it could be to a career. I set aside a career to support my wife. And she, you know, and so we set aside, we died to a certain financial level. Like Kirk, you know, he took the promotion. And how many of us take a promotion because it's more money, more responsibility, I'm more important. But now I'm working 60 hours a week instead of 40. And I got to work weekends. I got to work nights. And now I haven't, you know, seen my kids or my wife. What do you have to die to? And so the question that I have, and if you're watching on YouTube, put it in the comments. But that idea of, how have you faced death? We've all faced death, right? That's the thing we're talking about. It could be our own. It could be a loved one. It could be the death of a career or dreams or whatever it is. But it's not just, hey, put it in the chats to drive engagement. I'm asking you to put it in the chat because we would love to pray for you. Because we know that death is not the end.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that there is far, far better ahead of you. And what does Jesus say? No one who has given up lands or family or money or whatever, who've sacrificed that for the kingdom will receive much more in this life and the life to come. My paraphrase.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd love to pray for comfort in that, for healing in that, whatever that is for you. Because I don't know. I'm just a dude in my office on a computer screen and talking on a camera. But we do believe there's something invisible. There's something more powerful than death. And so we just invite you to share that in the comments, especially on the YouTube channel. That's probably the easiest. And we'd love to just pray for the Holy Spirit, the Comforter, to come wrap the arms of God around you, that you feel embraced by his love as you grieve and grieve appropriately. Whatever it is, we've all lost something. We've all had death enter our stories because we live in a fallen world. So whatever that is, I pray now, and I'll pray again when I see the comments of just pray for the arms of the Comforter, the love of Jesus Christ to embrace you tangibly, that you feel the refuge of God's heart, the only safe place on earth, because the truth is that he loves you and he is good. And as you mentioned, Britt, the lie the enemy comes at us with the warfare and the death is, see what I mean? God doesn't really love you. And so hold on to that truth that God loves you and he is good.
Yeah, he likes you.
He doesn't just tolerate you, and he's like,
no. And as his child, he is well pleased with you. As his child now in Christ, we have to receive that too, man. This is my son in whom I am well pleased, my daughter. He's happy year round. But just love, good.
And the other thing that came to mind when you were saying that is he's not hard to find. But it's hard for us to turn to him and accept it.
Good.
Because it doesn't feel true, so we don't think it is true. But we come through death. We're baptized through the water to come out of the water. Through light, through death, we find life.
Yep.
So this has been Paul McDonald and Britt Mooney talking about Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you join us next time here on the Men at the Movies podcast.
Something inside has been awakened. I can no longer be who I was before. But if I am no longer who I was, who am I to be?